Wait lang, te. Ayan, go.
Okay na, pero.
Oo.
Okay, go. So, good evening, everyone, again. We are Group 3, and we are tasked with maple syrup urine disease. Next. So, this is also known as branched chain alpha keto acid dehydrogenase complex deficiency. It is a rare inherited disorder caused by the body's inability to process the branched chain amino acid na nag-lead sa characteristic odor ng maple syrup sa urine ng baby. So, yung pinaka-important na dapat nating matandaan sa disease na ito is yung deficiency ng branched chain alpha keto acid dehydrogenase or the BCAD complex, which is responsible sa pag-breakdown ng tatlong branched chain amino acid, which is yung isoleucine, leucine, and valine. Next. So, since it is really rare, nag-occur lang siya 1 in 185,000 newborns. Common siya sa countries na may consanguineous marriage, which is marriage between individuals who are closely related by blood. So, in Southeast Asia, frequency is not known, possibly because hindi lahat may comprehensive newborn screening programs na nag-include ng MSUD. So, cases are usually unnoticed. Next. Moving on, nasa pathophysiology. As you can see, yung red box, nagpapakita siya, sinushow niya yung pathway for valine, isoleucine, and leucine. So, valine is considered a glucogenic amino acid. Leucine is a ketogenic, and isoleucine is both glucogenic and ketogenic. So, these three amino acid is important because it serves as an alternate source of fuel for the brain, usually under conditions ng starvation. Next. So for these three amino acids to be catabolized, the series of reaction for them to produce yung intermediates na kailangan to enter either yung Krebs cycle or maging precursor siya ng ketone bodies. So, yung first process is yung transamination ng tatlong amino acid by cytosolic and mitochondrial branch chain aminotransferase para maproduce yung branch chain alpha keto acid. So, leucine will be transaminated to alpha keto isocaproate, isoleucine to alpha keto beta methylvalerate, and valine to alpha keto isovalerate. So, next step, dito na papasok yung sinasabi ko kanina na BCAD complex. And ang nangyayari dito is yung branch chain alpha keto acid mag-undergo into oxidative decarboxylation. So, mangyayari is remove yung carboxyl group tapos reduction ng blood H. So, important na mangyari to kasi dapat ma-convert yung substrate na to to energy-rich compounds na pwedeng magamit sa metabolic pathways natin. Pero sa MSUD, wala tong complex na to. So since lagi in-emphasize si Doc EJ na pag wala yung isang complex na yun, ay pag wala yung enzyme na yun, lahat ng metabolites ang sa taas niya is mag-accumulate. So next, isa pang next. Yan. So now, ang manifestation ng accumulation ng branched chain amino acid is first mental retardation. So, ang mataas dito is yung leucine, tsaka yung alpha keto isoproate. So, nag-lead siya ng cerebral edema. Paano nangyayari? Kaya niya kasing i-cross yung blood-brain barrier natin. And once na nasa loob na siya ng brain, nadi-disrupt niya yung normal brain metabolism natin. Kasi ini-induce niya yung production ng reactive oxygen species na nag-i-impair sa neuronal function and viability. Tapos, leucine in particular is neurotoxic siya. Tapos, pag mataas yung concentration ng leucine sa brain, nagkaka siya ng cerebral edema. We have research na ina-attract niya yung glutamate dehydrogenase by allosteric activation. Tapos, ang mangyayari is tataas yung glutamate dehydrogenase na maglilid ng higher levels of ammonia production. Tapos, convert into glutamine. Glutamine is an osmotically active neurotransmitter. So, nagdo-draw siya ng water into the cell, kaya naglilid to ng edema. So, next, disrupted din yung neurotransmitter production natin. Because first, nagko-compete sila sa transporters. So, if mataas yung branch chain amino acid, pwede niyang ma-outcompete yung ibang amino acid, kaya nare-reduce yung uptake sa brain. Second, leucine kasi precursor sa ibang neurotransmitter like glutamate and GABA. So, pag mataas yung level, nadi-disrupt niya yung balance and nag-lead ng abnormal muscle tone. Kasi nag-play siya ng crucial role sa muscle tone regulation. So, if imbalance siya, nag-lead siya ng muscle stiffness or spasticity. Next, leucine kasi nag-activate, hindi, wait lang. Yan. Nag-activate siya ng, ito yung MTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin pathway. Basta important siya sa protein synthesis natin. So, if okay yung amount, okay siya. Pero if elevated nga, nagkakaroon ng imbalance and mas tendency is mas ipifavor niya yung ibang neurotransmitter kaysa sa iba. So, next. So, elevated yung valin, ay pag elevated naman yung valin and its metabolite, which is yung alpha keto isovalerate, which is responsible for maple syrup odor. Ngayon naman, high levels of leucine and isoleucine, which is yung ketogenic, uh, nag-lead siya ng ketosis. Ketosis means yung stored fat natin na convert into ketone as primary source of fuel for our brain. Since hindi nga nako-convert yung branch chain alpha keto acid natin, nag-accumulate siya ng nag-accumulate. So, pag tumaas na naman siya, pwede siyang mag-cause ng metabolic acidosis. Ngayon, pag tumaas yung, ipropromote niya yung production ng ketone bodies natin since ito try niyang mag-compensate for yung acid imbalance natin. Next. So, yung BCAD complex, nag-occur siya sa inner mitochondrial membrane, which is may tatlong complex tayo doon. And mutation within these complexes leads to MSUD. Next. So, may 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 na types yung MSUD natin. First is yung classic, which is impaired yung tatlong complex. Less than 2% na lang yung activity ng enzyme. Typically presents within the first few days of life. So, symptoms include metabolic crisis and cerebral edema. Next is yung intermediate and intermittent MSUD, which is milder form than the classic one. So, both A2 deficient sila, but vary on BCAD complex activity. Makikita natin na mas mataas yung activity sa intermittent, which relates to its onset. Late infancy si intermittent, while early infancy si intermediate. Sa thiamine responsive naman, E1 complex yung deficient. Kaya, kaya variable yung BCAD activity. Ang gumagana is either E2, E3, or both. So, this type of MSUD, nag-improve naman siya with high doses of thiamine or the vitamin B1. So, lastly, E3 deficiency MSUD, which is a multi-enzyme defect, particularly dihydrolipomide dehydrogenase gene. So, onset niya is neonate. Next. So, all in all, nagmamanifest siya sa neonatal period with failure to thrive, delayed yung developmental milestone, feeding difficulties, lethargy, irritability, tapos yun nga, maple syrup odor. First na notice sa cerebral and then sa urine. So, if hindi ito na-treat, most severe classic forms can quickly lead to irreversible neurological injury, manifesting as yung sinabi ko nga kanina, brain damage, seizures, coma, central respiratory failure within just 7 to 10 days after birth. Next. So, for diagnosis naman, first is yung prenatal diagnostic testing. Uh, Molecular analysis, which detects BCAD enzyme activity in cultured chorionic villus or yung placental tissue natin. Or amniocentesis, in which amniotic fluid sample kinukuha between 15 to 20 weeks of pregnancy for assessing branched-chain amino acid concentration. Pwede ring pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. Usually ito kapag in vitro yung ginagamit na fertilization. Next. Sa newborn screening naman, usually conducted within 24 to 48 hours after birth using tandem mass spectrometry. So, drops of blood are collected from baby's heel and then use mass spectrometry to detect elevated branched chain amino acid, particularly leucine and isoleucine. So, next yung pinaka-important, plasma amino acid testing, which is considered the most reliable diagnostic test. Kapag greater than 5 micromole per liter yung allo-isoleucine, considered na siya as MSUD. Yung threshold na to, nagdi-differentiate siya ng MSUD from other conditions na nagkakos ng mataas na branched chain amino acid. For treatment naman, it is important na mag-start ng MSUD formula, which is branched chain amino acid free dapat siya even before confirmatory testing because nagpo-provide siya ng necessary nutrients without the harmful branched chain amino acid. Glucose infusion naman need to prevent catabolism of proteins which would release branched chain amino acid sa bloodstream natin. Also, to limit na rin yung brain damage kahit sa mga asymptomatic newborn. So, intravenous lipids naman for alternate energy source to ensure, ay, and infusion to enhance anabolism para ma-ensure na yung alternate energy source na magre-reduce ng ay, wait. Para ma-ensure na may alternative energy source at para ma-reduce yung reliance ng protein for energy. So, next. For nutritional strategies, uh, dietary branched chain amino acid is adjusted based on the biochemical markers and growth. So, need na nasa safe range yung plasma levels ng branched chain amino acid to prevent neurological damage. Kasala din dito yung adjustment ng diet sa growth monitoring to make sure na nare-receive pa rin yung adequate nutrition kahit na nire-restrict natin yung branched chain amino acid. So, long-term management, nire-require na yung accurate calorie intake assessment to prevent deficiencies. Need kasi na need na mag-consume ng enough calories para ma-prevent yung protein catabolism nga. Para hindi rin mag-increase yung branched chain amino acid levels. So, branched chain amino acid free medical foods. Importante to because it can meet up to 80 to 90% of protein needs. So, yung mga food na to are designed to provide essential amino acids and nutrients kahit wala yung branched chain amino acids. So, leucine supplementation is typically unnecessary kasi meron na siya sa breast milk and formula. Next. So, for our outpatient home therapy, dapat reduce yung leucine intake or frequent small feedings lang to prevent yung toxic accumulation. Tapos kapag inpatient management naman, hydration and caloric support is important, lalo na sa pag-maintain ng electrolyte balance, which is crucial during yun nga yung symptoms ng metabolic crisis. Uh, as I've said earlier, insulin and glucose infusion to promote glucose uptake to reduce protein breakdown. Also, total parenteral nutrition. So, intravenous to, binabypass na yung digestive system, lalo na sa mga hindi nakaka-obtain ng adequate nutrition through oral. So, that would be all for MSUD. And next, Erna and Janet will tackle phenylketonuria. Thank you.
Hello? Next, please. Phenylketonuria is an inborn error of metabolism. It is most often caused by missense mutation in the gene encoding phenylalanine hydroxylase, which catalyzes the hydroxylation of phenylalanine thyroxine. Next. It is also inherited as autosomal recessive, and there are 1,000 mutations resulting in PKU. The most common replaces arginine with tryptophan at position 408.
Okay. Ay, let's go na po sa pathophysia. So, gaya ng sinabi kanina, from the word itself, phenylketonuria, ibig sabihin ng involved na amino acid dito is yung phenylalanine. Now, this phenylalanine is essential amino acid. So, it cannot be synthesized in the body, but should be obtained in the diet. And another info is that it is ketogenic and glucogenic kasi nagpo-produce siya ng fumarate and acetyl acetate. Now, this phenylalanine need to be converted into tyrosine because tyrosine is the precursor ng madaming kumbaga for example, thyroglobulin which is precursor ng thyroid hormones like T3, T4. And then precursor din siya ng L-DOPA which produce the melanin and then catecholamines which are epinephrine or epinephrine. So it is really important na ma-convert natin siya into tyrosine to be used in the body. Now, mako-convert natin siya with the help of our enzyme. And that is phenylalanine hydroxylase. Wait lang. Ayun. So pag ang phenylalanine hydroxylase, it uses cofactor which we call the hydrobiopterin, or we can write it as BH4. Ayan, BH4. And then pag nag-interact siya sa enzyme natin, mag-oxidize siya into dihydrobiopterin, or we can write it as BH2. Ngayon, this BH2 need to be generated back again to BH4 para magtuloy-tuloy yung reaction. So, dito pumapasok yung NADPH natin, which will donate ng electron sa ating BH2 para bumalik siya or ma-convert siya into BH4. So, NADPH natin, magiging NADP na siya ngayon. And yung nagka-catalyze na enzyme sa process na ito is the dihydrobiopterin reductase. So, need nating tandaanan importante itong tatlong to kasi yung major factor mamaya sa phenylketonuria. Ayan, next slide po. Ayan. So, once na nagkaroon ng problem dito sa mga enzyme na to, and sa ating BH4, hindi ngayon mako-convert ang ating phenylalanine sa tyrosine. Kaya nagkakaroon tayo nung phenylketonuria, kung saan yung phenylalanine, masyado na siyang mataas, nag-accumulate na siya sa body, nagiging toxic na siya. So, dito pumapasok yung 5 types nung phenylketonuria natin. So, pag ang problem nandito sa phenylalanine hydroxylase, type 1 siya. So, tandaan na lang natin yung type 1 or the classic phenylketonuria. Pag dito naman sa baba, sa reductase naman, dihydrobiopterin reductase, it's type 2, and 3. So, ang difference lang nila is yung severity lang nila. So, milder si 2 kaysa kay 3. Pero ang problem sa reductase pa din. And then, pag si BH4 naman, dito na yung type 4, ayun, type 4 and type 5. Dito na siya ma-write. Ayan. And 5. So, yun. Ayan. So, Since we cannot convert the phenylalanine to tyrosine, now the phenylalanine will take alternative pathway. Ayan, next po. Eh, paano ba tanggalin to? Ayun. Wait. Ayan, so ito na yung alternative pathway natin. So yung phenylalanine natin, it undergoes transamination through our transaminase. Ayan, transaminase. And then, to form our phenylpyruvate. This reaction also involves alpha ketoglutarate and then will be converted into glutamate. Ayan, so yun. And then, next slide. Ayan. Yung phenylpyruvate natin, mag-go another info pala, kaya phenylketonuria siya kasi yung phenylpyruvate natin is a keto acid. So, doon nang galing yung keto sa pangalan na phenylketonuria. So, itong phenylpyruvate natin, mag-undergo siya ng dalawang metabolic processes. So, dito sa right, it can undergo reduction to form our phenylactate. Ayan. And then sa left side naman, it will undergo oxidative decarboxylation to form our phenylacetate. And this phenylacetate will combine with our glutamate, and then to form our phenylacetylglutamine. Ngayon, tandaan na natin, kasi isa sa characteristic ng phenylketonuria is yung musty and mouthy odor ng urine. Ngayon, ang culprit doon is itong phenylacetate. So, yun yung nagkakos nun. And then, yun nga, after na ma-convert ito sa phenylacetate glutamine, ma-excrete na siya sa ating urine. Ayun. Next po. Ayun. So, elevated phenylalanine and its metabolites such as phenylpyruvate lead to toxicity. Sabi niya kanina, pag masyadong madami yung amino acid na to. And then, dahil hindi na siya ma-convert into tyrosine, magre-reduce din yung production ng tyrosine. So, tyrosine is essential for producing neurotransmitters like dopamine, norepinephrine, adrenaline na nabanggit ko kanina. And then also required for melanin, which gives skin hair color, leading to lighter skin and hair where tyrosine is low. Next po. Cognitive impairment mechanisms are not fully understood, but increased oxidative stress may contribute to neurodegeneration. Then additional mechanisms include altered neurotransmitter metabolism, decreased cerebral protein synthesis, and disrupted energetic. Next po. And history and physical. In the US, newborn screening typically identifies PKU, allowing for immediate dietary management by a specialist team. So, yung untreated PKU causes severe development issues like delays, microcephaly, seizures, gano'n. Kasi nga dahil sa toxic level ng phenylalanine na naapektuhan yung brain function. Then, meron din yung hyperactivity. So, yung neurotransmitter kasi nagiging imbalance kasi nga 'di ba yung tyrosine produces L-DOPA na soon to nagiging catecholamines, which is sa norepinephrine natin yun. Ay, hindi pala. Yung sa may ano pala yun, sorry, sa thyroglobulin pala yung sa hormones din. And then, hypopigmentation, ayun din, kasi nga, di ba, sa melanin production din. Tapos, distinctive body odor. Gaya na sabi ko kanina, ang pinaka-culprit doon sa odor na yun is yung phenylacetylglutamine. Ayan. So, maternal PKU resulting from uncontrolled phenylalanine levels during pregnancy poses significant risk to the fetus, including cardiac defect and even death. Next po. Then, however, affected children who are diagnosed and appropriately treated at birth are less likely to show symptoms. Long-term care focuses on adherence to dietary therapy, monitoring of blood, phenylalanine and tyrosine level, and assessing for potential cognitive impairment. So next, ay diagnosis na.
For diagnosis and treatment of phenylketonuria, since phenylketonuria is inborn error of metabolism din siya, pwede din natin gawin yung newborn screening test. Then for confirmatory test, then must spectrophotometry to quantify phenylalanine and tyrosine levels. Next, please. Yung isa. Yan. Classic PKU can be treated by lifelong dietary therapy. Focus on maintaining low phenylalanine levels and adequate tyrosine intake. Then oral sapropterin dihydrochloride. It helps to lower phenylalanine level in some PKU patients. Next. Immediate and lifelong management. Since kailangan natin i-restrict yung phenylalanine level para ma-prevent yung neurotoxicity. Initiate PKU formula, phenylalanine free. Maintain blood phenylalanine levels within 120 to 360 micromole per liter. Then monitor tyrosine levels. Next. For long-term dietary management, yun nga, i-restrict natin yung diet for phenylalanine, avoid the high phenylalanine food like meat, dairy, nuts, legumes. Then, tyrosine supplementation, since hindi natin nakakonvert yung phenylalanine to tyrosine, kailangan natin mag-tyrosine supplementation for regular monitoring of blood phenylalanine and nutritional status. Next. Summary. Same si MSUD tsaka si phenylketonuria ay same lang na autosomal recessive. Tapos yung distinct clinical feature ni MSUD is yun nga, maple syrup odor in urine. Then kay PKU naman is mousy or musty odor. For diagnosis, yung branch chain amino acid ni MSUD is increase in serum and urine. Then si PKU naman is increase yung phenylalanine tyrosine ratio in serum. Management, same silang diet restriction. Next po. Thank you.
Meron po bang yung may mga questions dyan?
From group 4 na lang. Tapos sundin na lang natin yung ginawa ni Doc doon sa classroom.
Mukhang wala
Kung
na.
wala, kung wala po is
Proceed na tayo.
or yun, comments from group 4 na lang. Ano yung mga insights nyo regarding dun sa mga reporting nung group 3?
Siguro masasabi ko na na-appreciate ko yung way nila ng pag-present kasi it's the way they presented was in an organized manner. Tapos dun sa pathophysiology na inexplain ni Danny kanina was very well detailed and even yung sa inexplain ni Irna sa phenylketonuria. Ayun.
Okay, so more pa na mga insights from group 4 or from any other group? Group 1?
Ma'am, ako may tanong.
Sige.
Bakit kaya nagkokos ng... Ay, di ko alam kung na-miss ko to, pero bakit nagkokos ng melanin insufficiency yung phenylketonuria kung pwede naman palang isupply sa diet yung tyrosine? Ang problema ba sa phenylketonuria ay yung pag-absorb ng tyrosine or dun lang siya may problema sa pag-convert ng phenylalanine to tyrosine?
Sa
Paulit ko yung
pagkakaalam
topic
ko.
si Medyo Chappy kasi.
Ayun pala.
Nag-Shopee?
Yes po.
Ay,
Sige,
ang tanong ko po,
pakiulit na lang yung kan. Pakiulit na lang yung question.
bakit nagkakos ng melanin insufficiency yung phenylketonuria kung pwede naman palang isupplement sa diet natin yung tyrosine? Ang problema ba sa phenylketonuria is yung absorption ng, kasama ba sa problema ng phenylketonuria yung absorption ng tyrosine or solely yung conversion lang ng phenylalanine to tyrosine?
So yan, any answer from group 3?
Hello? Rinig ba ako?
Medyo pakilakas na lang yung mga speakers natin.
Hello? Naririnig ba ako?
Mahina te.
Shucks, sige, wait. Wait lang. Sa groupmates ko, kayo na lang muna sumagot. Wait lang, ayusin ko mic ko.
Sige, wait muna natin yung sagot ni Nicole.
Hello?
Hello?
Try
Hello?
mo salita.
Naririnig ba?
Okay.
Rinig?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
ang alam ko, yung ah, sa PKU, yung sa conversion siya ng phenylalanine to tyrosine kasi nga kulang yung enzyme na phenylalanine hydroxylase. So, yun yung main problem niya na hindi siya sa absorption mismo ng tyrosine. And then, ano yung question about sa yung sa, supplement? Di ko kasi gaanong narinig kanina.
Curious lang, bakit siya nagkakos ng melanin insufficiency sa katawan? Di ba ito ba yung tama ba yung nagwa-white yung hair nung patient? Kung pwede naman palang i-supplement yung tyrosine sa diet niya.
Ayun, di ba na-explain din yung yung nagiging cause nga nung, for example, yung sa pag-white ng hair. Um, pwede rin siya dahil sa tyrosine deficiency. Kasi since hindi nga naka-convert ng phenylalanine to tyrosine, ay di ba ang tyrosine kasi precursor ng melanin. So nagiging parang limited yung melanin production. Kaya yung hair or kahit yung skin nagiging pale. And then ayun, kahit siguro i-supplement ang tyrosine, may epekto pa rin siya sa ah may effect pa rin pag mataas yung phenylalanine level. So, for example, wait lang. Ay, ayun. Sorry. Medyo nawala ako sa train of thought. Pero yung sa regarding sa sa pagka-supplement, nasagot man ba or need ng further ano?
Oo, ate, thank you.
May question ako. Wala. Paano pag ano, 'di ba sa isa sa mga symptoms ng phenylketonuria yung ano, yung paleness, tapos yung pagputi ba ng buhok, tama ba?
Oo.
Kapag nag-intake ba ng ano, ng yung tyrosine is babalik din ba sa normal yung color ng kanilang hair or yung skin nila?
I think it's possible naman if um, proper intervention and ayun, kung proper intervention and timely yung naging ah management. May ibang sagot ba yung iba kong ka-group? Baka may idea po kayo.
Yung sagot ko dun sa question ni Jenny kanina. Rinig na ba ako?
Yes po.
Okay. Ayun, add ko lang rin dun sa sinagot ni Marla. Um, Kaya may melanin insufficiency pa rin kahit we can supplement tyrosine sa diet. Eh yung, 'di ba, may high levels of phenylalanine kasi tayo sa PKU. So yung high levels kasi na yun, nagko-compete rin kasi siya sa pag-uptake natin ng tyrosine. So kahit na nasusupplement natin siya sa diet, nandun pa rin yung competition between uptake ng phenylalanine and tyrosine. Kaya may nagma-manifest pa rin yung symptoms. Yung sa second question, hindi ko sure yung sagot. Baka alam ng iba kong groupmates.
Hello. Yung sa kay Nico naman, yung kung magte-take ng, ano Nico, yung magte-take ng tyrosine, tapos babalik sa dati yung composition ng skin tsaka hair.
Yes, Doc.
Mm. Kapag magte-take ka kasi ng tyrosine, i-increase niya yung melanin kasi 'di ba ganun yung symptoms kasi ng PKU is yung magkakaroon ka ng paleness and yun nga, white hair. Ang gagawin lang ng tyrosine kasi i-reduce niya lang yung paleness. Hindi siya magbabalik sa dating composition niya pero mare-reduce yung paleness. And for the hair color naman kasi hindi niya completely mare-reverse yung white hair pero magkakaroon ng promotion sa growth ng bagong buhok which may cause a
Dagdag
yun
ko
lang.
na lang din, kung iisipin siguro, kung nag-supplement ka ng tyrosine, which is a precursor ng melanin, so siguro possible nga siya na tumaas yung melanin production of course. And I'm not sure if pwedeng mabalik sa normal or sa dating color yung or yung sa dating pigmentation. Pero I think it's possible to at least um mabawasan yung hypopigmentation. Ayun. Tsaka I think depende rin siya sa sa kung gaano na ba kalala yung naging epekto nung disease doon sa patient. If possible pa ba yung um if possible pa ba yung ganong effects kapag nag-supplement nga ng tyrosine. Ayun lang po.
Thank you. So, na-appreciate po ba ng lahat yung sa group 3? Tsaka yung ating mga question and answers. Kung sino pa po yung may mga questions, mag-raise na po tayo ng mga questions. And let's clap hands para po sa group 3. Okay na po. Okay na po ba? So, thank you for the presentation group 3. Mag-comment na lang si Doc EJ sa inyong report kapag napanood niyo na yung recordings. Thank you. Okay, sa group 4 naman po tayo next.
Okay. Good evening. Naririnig naman ng lahat, ano? So, for the group 6, we're going to report about the porphyrias. Next. Hmm. So, what are the objectives dito sa porphyria? Number 1, to identify the porphyria and classify the different types. Number 2, to explain the biochemical pathway of heme biosynthesis and identify the key enzyme involved.
Him pa rin. Ay, oo, porphyrin pala. Porphyrin lang.
Ano yun?
Okay. For the third objective,
Ano ba explain porphyria?
Ma'am, excuse me, Kat.
to understand the clinical presentation, diagnostic feature, and pathophysio associated with each type of porphyria, specifically, yung dalawang famous na porphyria, the porphyria cutanea tarda and the acute intermittent porphyria. Next. So, una, pag-usapan muna natin kung anong ibig sabihin ng porphyria. Porphyria refers to the group of rare disorder. Rare lang sila. So, madalang lang natin sila ma-encounter sa mga hospitals. And the result from the build-up of natural chemical called porphyrins. Result from a deficiency. Kapag meron tayong deficiency ng mga enzymes, specific enzymes that help in the heme biosynthesis pathway, sila yung mga nagpo-cause ng problem. So makikita natin mamaya. So, yung dalawang type nila, pwede natin silang i-classify into two parts, erythropoietic and hepatic. Kapag sinabi natin na erythropoietic, nasa bone marrow yung problema natin, while the hepatic naman is from the liver. So those are the two classification of porphyria, erythropoietic and hepatic manifestation. Next. So, sige, next na lang. Ayan. So, pagdating dito sa ating diagram, unang-una, dalawang ingredient muna yung kailangan natin to make a heme. First is the succinyl-CoA and the glycine. Using the ALA synthesis, ang ginagawa natin dyan, pinagko-combine natin yan para makagawa tayo ng D-ALA or aminolevulinic acid. Unang-una, gagawin natin yan into the part of mitochondria. Yung kagaya niyang sinabi ni Doc EJ, unang-una sa mitochondria muna natin gagawin and lalabas tayo papuntang cytoplasm. And following with this pathway, meron tayong porphobilinogen. Sunod-sunod na ito hanggang sa babalik ulit tayo dito sa mitochondria. So the pathway will be mitochondria, cytoplasm, then balik ulit ng mitochondria. Ngayon mapapansin natin that mitochondria is the part wherein we synthesize or we going to have oxidation. Maalala nyo yung pathway ng ating beta oxidation? Di ba sa mitochondria siya ginagawa? So that will be our cheat code para malaman natin kapag may nakita kayo doon sa enzyme na oxidase, ibig sabihin, ginawa natin siya inside the mitochondria. So, dalawa lang yung tatandaan natin dito. Unang-una, the first step, wherein the succinyl-CoA will happen into the mitochondria. And the last part, yung heme part, kung saan bubuuin na natin yung heme, and that will be the oxidation. Actually, dalawang step of oxidation or dalawang enzyme of oxidase yung kailangan natin. Check natin ulit mamaya kung ano yung pangalawang oxidase. So, the rest will be happen in the cytoplasm. Ngayon, dito tayo magkakaroon ng problema ngayon sa cytoplasm. Next slide. Isa pa. Isa pa. Ayan. Paano ba natin alisin yung ayun? Yan, dito. So we will going to divide this into two. Eto, magmula dito sa succinyl CoA hanggang dito sa third part, lahat ng mga ito will be neurological symptoms ang i-cause nito. Neurological symptoms lahat ang i-cause nito. While the rest, hanggang dito sa baba, will be blistering. Ito na yung tinatawag natin na may problema sila sa may balat nila when they will going to expose sa light. Ano ba yung difference netong dalawa na to? Lahat ng mga nasa taas, the first three step, will have this what we call forfabilinogen accumulation as well with aminolevulinic acid accumulation. So, ito yung second actually, ito eh. Ito yung pangalawa na pinaka-common type of porphyria na nangyayari sa isang tao. The second or the first one na laging nagkakaroon ng problema natin will be this one, the porphyria cutanea tarda. Ano po ba yung difference ng dalawang ito? Unang-una, kapag ginagawa natin ang heme natin, bumubuo tayo ng tinatawag na porphyrin rings. Porphyrin rings. Yung porphyrin rings na yon will be determining kung anong type of porphyria yung mangyayari. Kapag there's a presence of porphyrin rings, ibig sabihin nun, magkakaroon tayo ng blistering kasi they will go into involve into what we call oxidations. Oxidation. Yung oxidation na yan, once na na-expose kasi sa light, or very photosensitive kasi itong step na to, once na na-expose sila sa light, there will be a reaction from the superoxide. Kaya ang nangyayari sa mga superoxide, wherein our body is consists of many mast cell, marami tayong polymorphonuclear na mga cells sa katawan, lahat ng mga yon kapag na-expose lahat sa air or sa light, lahat ng mga yon, nagkukos ito ng photosensitivity. Kaya mapapansin natin may pamamaga, meron tayong mga parang rashes sa mga porphyric person. Ang characteristic ng isang porphyric person is unang-una, mapuputla sila, and as well, hindi sila pwedeng maarawan kasi once na na-expose sila sa araw, sabi nga natin, nagkakaroon sila ng mga inflammation into their skins as well with the reaction doon sa kanilang mga balat na nagkukos ito ng mga rashes. So they are basically para silang mga vampire in reality na kung saan kapag na-expose sa light, mapuputla pa sila, dun ang characteristic nila. Ngayon, once na nagkaroon tayo ng porphyrin rings sa mga yon, so the step na nagkukos ng porphyrin rings or the presence of porphyrin rings will be from here, from the hydroxymethyl bilane hanggang dito sa paggawa na natin ng heme or the last step. So next. Parang delay ata yung ano. So, ito yung second famous na na type of porphyria, the porphyria cutanea tarda. Porphyria cutanea tarda is actually the most common type of all porphyria. Supposedly dapat may acute dito which include form of disease that causes skin symptoms as a result of the sensitivity to the light, to the sunlight. This form usually don't affect nervous system. So that will be the difference niya doon sa tinatawag nating acute intermittent na porphyria. So ang dapat nyo lang tandaan dito sa porphyria cutanea tarda na to is it causes blister. Nagkukos siya ng blister. So this will be the pathophysio. Ang wala sa kanya is the uroforfibilinogen 3. Eto, uroforfibilinogen decarboxylase. So basically, ang mag-a-accumulate sa kanya will be the step bago yung pagkawala ng enzyme wherein the forfibilinogen 3. So yan lang yung dapat ninyong tandaan dito sa porphyria na to, and as well photosensitivity or photosensitive siya. Next. So this will be the signs and symptoms of this porphyria. sensitive to the sunlight, and sometimes artificially light causing burning pain in the skin. So bawal silang maarawan. Masakit na mga blisters, and as well with this red-brown urine. Next. Ayan. So, ito naman yung pangalawang pinaka-common, the acute intermittent porphyria, may last hours or days. Intermittent meaning that the symptoms may go away but return later. When the symptoms occur, they are sometimes called attacks. Next. So kung yung kanina, ang problema natin kanina doon is the enzyme called urocorpibilinogen decarboxylase. This one naman, ang problema naman natin dito is the deaminase. Ang sabi ko kanina is kapag may present of porphyrin rings, there's a presence of blistering or na photosensitive. Ngayon, in this part, wala tayo ngayon photosensitivity kasi hindi pa natin nabubuo yung porphyrin rings na tinatawag. So, wala tayo ngayong problema. Ang problema natin ngayon dito will be the autonomic dysfunction. Basically, laging sumasakit ang tiyan, laging part ng symptoms nito will be the autonomic pain. Next, makikita natin sa next slide kung ano yung mga sign and symptoms. Ito. So this will be the sign and symptoms. Sinabi natin kanina are the autonomic, wherein involved ang digestive system natin, severe abdominal pain, chest and leg and back. Parehas din sila na nagkukos ng red-brown urine. And another thing, nagkakaroon din ito ng apekto sa utak ng isang tao, especially with the mental changes, anxiety, hallucination, and mental confusion. So very diverse yung symptoms nito when it comes with porphyria. Kaya hindi nila nadadiagnose agad kung porphyria ba to kasi ang unang diagnosis nila, if there's a presence of hallucination or mental changes, is nakikita nila yung tao na may changes with its behavior. And sabi nga natin, very rare yung mga type of disease na to, kaya hindi siya gaanong nadadiagnose. Saka lang siya nadadiagnose when it comes with the presence of other symptoms. Like for example, brown yung urine, tapos kapag in-expose mo pa sa matagal na na ilaw or na araw yung urine, mas nagiging darken siya. So those are the examples na magiging accurate when it comes with with diagnosis of this porphyria. And then next.
Ayan. So let's move on to the second type of porphyria naman, which is the erythropoietic porphyria. So ang difference ng erythropoietic porphyria dun sa hepatic porphyria kanina, which is yung mga diniscuss ni Adriel. So ang main difference nila is that ang erythropoietic porphyria kasi is caused by tawag dito, an autosomal recessive na inheritance ng genes. Whereas ang hepatic porphyria naman is caused by autosomal dominant na inherited genes. So, yung sa hepatic kanina, mainly, ang ina-affect talaga nun is sa liver. Ito naman sa erythropoietic is more on sa bone marrow. So, the first type is the congenital erythropoietic porphyria or the CEP. CEP is also known as the Gunter's disease, and it is a very rare inherited metabolic disorder resulting from the deficient function of the enzyme uroporphyrinogen 3 synthase or the UROS. So, alalahanin natin itong si UROS kasi mamaya pag in-explain ko yung pathophysiology niya, mababanggit siya ng madalas. So, itong UROS na to is the fourth enzyme in the heme biosynthetic pathway. So due to the impaired function of this enzyme, excessive amounts of certain porphyrins accumulate, particularly in the bone marrow, plasma, red blood cells, urine, teeth, and bones. Pa-move naman sa next slide. So as we can see here, ito na yung pathophysiology ng CEP. So makikita kasi natin dito sa tawag dito, sa may third part ito si hydroxymethylbilane. Siya yung immediate precursor ng uroporphyrinogens. So itong si HMB is makikita natin, So makikita natin from the HMB, dalawa yung possible na maging pathways niya para maka-synthesize ng uroporphyrinogen. So with the help of urose, yun, nabanggit ko kanina, makakagawa tayo ng uroporphyrinogen 3, and pag nagkaroon naman ng spontaneous na reaction, uroporphyrinogen 1 naman yung mabubuo natin. So, sino nga ba si urose? Ano nga ba ang role ng uroporphyrinogen 3 at saka uroporphyrinogen 1? So, sa next slide, pa-move naman po. Ayan. So makikita natin na ito yung structure ng HMB natin o yung hydroxymethylbilane natin. So as you can see here, tetrapyrrole siya. So pag sinabing tetrapyrrole, meron siyang 4 na rings. So you have rings A, B, C, and D. And makikita natin dito sa HMB na hindi pa closed yung ring. Meron ka pang opening dito. Ayan. May opening ka pa sa part na yan dito sa D-ring natin. So, ngayon, HMB is not a closed ring and it's still waiting for a final condensation process for it to close. So, if it happens spontaneously, it would follow the type 1 isomer, or which is known as the uroporphyrinogen 1. Ito yun, si type 1 isomer. And then, ayan. So, bago ako mag-proceed dito sa tawag dito, sa explanation ng role ni urose, tayo madali. Ayan. Bago ako mag-proceed sa role ni urose, ayan, tignan muna natin. So, itong uroporphyrinogen 1 natin, as you can see, pag nag-proceed na kasi itong spontaneous condensation na to, magko-close lang yung ring, tapos hindi siya magkakaroon ng repositioning or hindi mag-flip itong D-ring. So, kung i-compare natin si uroporphyrinogen 3 tsaka uroporphyrinogen 1, kung titignan natin yung D-ring nila, ito yung D-ring neto is baliktad na siya compared sa D-ring from the HMB. Ayan no. Makikita nyo, meron tayong propionate dito, meron din tayong acetate dito, which is nakabaliktad siya compared dito sa HMB natin na andito ang tawag dito, ang propionate niya, and andito naman yung, baliktad. Ito yung acetate niya, and andito naman yung propionate niya. So, that being said, pag nasunod lang kasi itong tawag dito, pag nasunod itong spontaneous pathway na makakabuo ka ng uroporphyrinogen 1, itong uroporphyrinogen 1 is hindi siya magagamit for heme synthesis kasi it lacks the necessary asymmetry for further enzymatic processing. So compared dito sa uroporphyrinogen 3, wherein yung urose is inaalaw na yung repositioning, ito yung repositioning ng D-ring mo, ayun, dito sa uroporphyrinogen 1, walang repositioning na nagaganap. So, ano ba ang significance ng repositioning na to? So, itong repositioning or yung flipping is significant for the next step in the heme synthesis. So, yun nga, gaya ng nabanggit ko kanina kasi kung titignan natin yung pathway niya, yung arrangement niya, yung conformation niya, yung original niya is mauuna lagi si acetate, propionate, acetate, propionate, acetate, propionate. Tapos yung sa D-ring is magiging propionate acetate na siya. Whereas dito naman sa uroporphyrinogen 1, isusundin lang niya na acetate, propionate lang siya. So when you divide uroporphyrinogen 1 bilaterally, mirror image lang yan. Symmetrical siya. So ano ba ang significance naman nung pagkakaroon ng asymmetry or nung flipping nga neto? So, the correct side chain arrangement, which is yung AP, 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 PA neto, is required for uroporphyrinogen 3 decarboxylase to act on the molecule. So, yung uroporphyrinogen 3 decarboxylase na to, nire-remove niya kasi yung acetate groups to form coproporphyrinogen 3, which is the next precursor sa heme synthesis. So, if the D-ring was not flipped, ayan, dito sa case ng uroporphyrinogen 1, the enzyme would not recognize or efficiently process the molecule. So na-halt yung pathway niya into building heme. So since Euro1 or itong uroporphyrinogen 1 is non-functional, it accumulates in diseases like itong CEP, leading to severe photosensitivity and red-colored urine due to porphyrin buildup. So i-recap lang natin before I move to the next para maintindihan ng lahat. So, basically, ang role lang talaga ni uroporphyrinogen 3 synthase is finiflip niya itong D-ring para makapag-proceed itong uroporphyrinogen 3 doon sa next na step ng heme synthesis. So, itong uroporphyrinogen 1 kasi hindi to nare-recognize ng uroporphyrinogen 3 decarboxylase, kaya hindi siya mag-proceed doon sa next step ng heme synthesis pathway. So, nagigets ba lang lahat yon? Pa-thumbs up na lang kung nagigets nyo. And
Yes
then,
po.
ayan, that's the pathophysiology of CEP. Let's move to the classic signs and symptoms of the disease. Ayan. So, ayun nga, gaya ng nabanggit ni Adriel kanina, in porphyria talaga, very common yung photosensitivity sa kanilang lahat. So, nagkakaroon ng skin blisters, ng redness, ulcerations, and in areas exposed to light. Then, sa lahat ng cases ng porphyria, ito talaga yung pinakamakikita nating lahat, which is yung dark red or amber-colored urine. This is because of the porphyrin buildup na na-accumulate and na-excrete sa urine natin. So sa CEP, makikita rin natin ang teeth discoloration. May reddish-brown discoloration ng teeth, especially sa deciduous teeth. Then, meron ding bone abnormalities, hemolytic anemia, which is a blood condition that can range from mild to severe. And lastly, splenomegaly, which is enlarged spleen. Okay, let's move to the next kind of erythropoietic porphyria. So, the second one naman is called the erythropoietic protoporphyria. So, this is the EPP, which is an inherited porphyria resulting in the accumulation of protoporphyrins in red blood cells that causes acute, painful photosensitivity and potential liver disease. So, it typically presents in early childhood with immediate pain and crying upon exposure to bright light. So, ayun, siguro naman sa atin as kung magiging parents man tayo, 'di ba parang ang lagi kasing sinasabi sa atin is maganda na na-expose sa sunlight ang mga bata kasi nga nakaka-synthesize tayo ng vitamin D pag na-expose tayo to the sun. But in the case of patients, especially babies na may EPP, pag na-expose sila sa sunlight, ang immediate reaction nila would be to cry kasi masakit nga yun. So, sa next slide, i-explain ko naman yung pathophysiology ng EPP. So, balikan natin yung in-explain ni Adriel kanina na heme synthesis pathway. So, kung yung CEP kanina is nasa third part siya ng heme synthesis, ito namang si EPP is makikita natin siya sa last part ng heme synthesis dito sa pinakababa. So, from protoporphyrin 9, tapos, mag-act upon yung ferrochelatase sa kanya, then maproproduce na yung heme natin. So, sino nga ba si protoporphyrin 9 at ano nga ba ang role ni ferrochelatase sa heme production? So, I want you all to remember itong structure ng protoporphyrin 9 natin dito. Ayan. Alalahanin nyo mabuti ito kasi medyo madugo tong explanation niya. So, in the next slide, move po sa next slide. Ayan. So in the next slide, makikita kasi natin na itong si protoporphyrin is naturally planar structure siya. So 2D structure lang siya. Tapos, pag yung mga 2D structures, diba, is mahirap siyang i-penetrate at mahirap sirain yung conformation niya. So, paano naman papasok ang ferrous iron natin or yung Fe2 natin sa isang structure na mahirap sirain? So, dito naman papasok yung role ni ferrochelatase. So, itong si ferrochelatase is an enzyme na papadaliin niya ang attachment ng ferrous iron sa protoporphyrin. So, itong si protoporphyrin kasi is masisynthesize siya sa loob ng mitochondrial matrix. Tapos, yung mga mga masisynthesize na protoporphyrin 9 is madi-diffuse sa parts ng cell na meron or kung saan naka-anchor na itong ferrochelatase. So, si ferrochelatase naman, ayan, meron siyang tinatawag na active site. So, yung active site ng ferrochelatase is meron siyang kinocontain na metal coordinating residues na papadaliin yung positioning ng ferrous iron. So, ngayon, itong si protoporphyrin 9, it would enter the active site of the ferrochelatase, which is a hydrophobic cleft in the inner mitochondrial membrane. So, yung mga residues na sinasabi ko kanina, in the active site like histidine, the glutamate, and arginine, nag-interact sila with the protoporphyrin 9 via hydrogen bonding and electrostatic interactions. So, itong si protoporphyrin 9 would bind in a very specific orientation, positioning its spiral nitrogen toward the metal binding site. Yung tinutukoy dito na pyrrole nitrogen niya is itong mga to. Yung mga rings ulit na yan. These are the pyrrole rings. So, kung nai-imagine nyo, from a flat planar configuration, nagkakaroon na siya. Oh my God. Hello? Ayan. So, from a flat planar conformation or configuration, is dahil nga meron na yung ferrochelatase na nag-act upon dun sa protoporphyrin natin, is nagkakaroon siya ng denting. Ayan, so parang nagiging pyramidal na yung itsura niya instead of the typical plane lang. Nagigets ba? Nai-imagine ba ng lahat yon? Hello? Naririnig pa ba ako?
Yes po.
Ayun. So from the planar configuration or conformation, nagiging parang pyramidal na siya. So, yung ferrochelatase, it alters the conformation of the protoporphyrin 9 by exerting mechanical strain on the tetrapyrrole rings. And na-achieve to through two kinds of interactions, which are the steric interactions tsaka electrostatic interactions. So the normally flat or the planar structure of the protoporphyrin 9 becomes puckered or domed. Ayun. Meaning yung one side of the microcycle bends outward while the opposite side remains relatively unchanged. So distortion na to ng itong distortion na to ng protoporphyrin is nire-reduce niya kasi yung electron delocalization. Tas parang wini-weaken niya kasi yung pi electron system. So ang nangyayari, itong apat na pyrrole rings natin, nagiging closer sila. Tapos nagiging parang yung closer na configuration nila would favor yung attachment ng ferrous iron to the protoporphyrin 9 structure. So, itong distortion na nangyayari na to, dinidisrupt na yung hydrogen bonding between the nitrogen atoms, tapos inaalaw na nito yung ferrous iron natin to attach to the protoporphyrin ring. Ayan, or protoporphyrin 9, I'm sorry. So the ferrous iron is delivered to the active site, and then yun na, pag na-attach na yung ferrous iron to the protoporphyrin ring, babalik na siya dun sa planar structure niya. Tapos, pag bumalik na siya dun sa planar structure niya, ayun na, mas stable na form na siya ng heme. Okay, so recap lang, dun sa EPP natin, so ang role ni ferrochelatase is gumagawa siya ng puckered or dome-like structure dun sa protoporphyrin to allow the attachment of the ferrous iron dun sa protoporphyrin 9 natin. Nagigets ba? Nagigets ba ng lahat yon? So, without the role of the ferrochelatase, ayun, so hindi mag-a-attach na efficiently or baka hindi mag-a-attach at all yung ferrous iron to the protoporphyrin. So, hindi rin siya makakabuo ng heme. So, ngayon, that being said, pag hindi tayo nakabuo ng heme, itong protoporphyrin na to will be stored. So, parang mag-accumulate siya and masustore siya as porphyrins, which will translate dun sa mga classical symptoms of porphyria. Next slide, please. Ayan. So, ayun. Symptoms of EPP naman would include painful, burning, itching, or tingling of the skin, swelling and redness or blanching of the skin, meron ding small bumps and blisters, merong thickening or scarring, edema, merong protoporphyric hepatopathy, jaundice, hepatic failure, and compared dun sa CEP kanina, which is splenomegaly or enlargement of the spleen ang makikita, sa EPP naman is hepatomegaly, which is enlargement of the liver. So let's now go to the diagnosis and treatment.
Okay. So in order for us to diagnose porphyria accurately, there are two tests we could utilize. First one is the porphyrin test. So this is considered to be the first line test. It is used to monitor the disease by detecting the amount of porphyrins and porphyrin precursors in your blood, urine, or stool, depending on the suspected type of porphyria. So in the case of suspected acute intermittent porphyria, an increased levels of porphobilinogen and aminolevulin, wait lang, aminolevulinic acid is observed. On the other hand, a significant increased levels in uroporphyrin and heptacarboxylporphyrin is an indicative of porphyria cutanea tarda. Next one would be the genetic test. So this checks for the gene mutations that cause porphyrias. So unlike with the first one, this provides a definitive diagnosis since it determines which specific gene is causing the mutation. So this test could be done on blood, saliva, or mouth swab sample. Moving on to the treatment and management. While treatment at the gene level may ultimately become possible, present treatment or porphyrias is essentially symptomatic. So basically, this would only reduce or inhibit the accumulation of porphyrins, subsequently minimizing the triggers. So this includes avoiding drugs that induce production of cytochrome P450. Diba sa cytochrome P450, this works, this, wait lang. This breaks down certain drugs and toxins. However, kailangan niya kasi ng heme for it to work. And since sa case ng porphyria, nahihirapan mag-synthesize ng heme, nag-accumulate yung porphyrins. And these would exacerbate symptoms, including nerve problems. Next is moderate intake of carbohydrate. Then administration of hematine to repress ALAS1 synthesis to diminish production of harmful heme precursors. So patients exhibiting photosensitivity would greatly benefit from sunscreens and possibly from administered B-carotene, which appears to lessen produce of free radicals, decreasing photosensitivity. Last one would be the phlebotomy. So this is the first-line therapy for porphyria cutanea tarda. This primarily works to reduce hepatic iron accumulation. Kasi 'di ba nga sa porphyria, wait lang. So iron accumulation would inhibit So 'di ba overaccumulation ng iron would inhibit the synthesis at the pathway to continue. So magkakaroon ng inhibition of certain enzymes, then magbi-build up to ng uroporphyrins, leading to photosensitivity and blistering skin lesions. That would be all. Thank you.
So that concludes the report of Group 4 regarding porphyria. We're open for questions po if meron man.
Sige, sige. Thank you very much. Bali, ito, meron tayong isang unang question. Ano daw yung common causes ng acquired porphyria aside sa congenital na na-discuss na?
Ayun, so, can you repeat the question? Sorry, di ko narinig.
Sige, sige. Yung question is from the anonymous. Ito. Anong common causes ng acquired porphyria aside from congenital na na-discuss niyo na?
Ayun. So, di ba nabanggit naman kanina na dalawa yung types ng porphyria. So, sa hepatic tayo mag-focus when it comes to acquired. So, siguro yung mga activities like alcohol abuse, ganyan. Tapos yung pagkakaroon din ng mga end-stage renal diseases would actually lead to hepatic porphyria. And um, other other diseases siguro that can cause the hepatic porphyria or yung PCP kanina would be chronic hepatitis tapos HIV infection. Ayun.
Okay, sige, sige. Okay, sige. Nasatisfy na daw yung isa niyang tanong. Okay, meron pang isang tanong. From another anonymous question. Ito. Kung sensitive sa light yung bata na may yung erythropoietic ba yun? Yung sensitive sa light?
Yes.
Yan. So, kung sensitive sa light yung bata, paano yung alternative na gagawin para bumaba yung unconjugated bilirubin niya?
Wala akong idea dyan sa part na yan. Maybe my groupmates can help. Hello po. Patulong naman sagutin yung question.
Thank you. And mag-ready na rin yung yung group 1 mamaya ng comments regarding. Tapusin muna natin itong Q&A. Thank you.
Ang nakikita ko na lang kasi I tried reading some sources online. So if a patient or a baby cannot be exposed to light kasi nga tawag dito, photosensitive siya, I think pwede siguro ang transfusion, exchange transfusion. So sa transfusion na to is nare-replace lang yung portion ng blood ng baby with donor blood para ma-lower yung unconjugated bilirubin niya.
Okay. Nasatisfy ba yung or may follow-up question ba si Anonymous?
Go lang, please speak up. Di kami magagalit.
And curious lang daw siya sa ganun. Okay. So ito pa, meron pa isang tanong. Kwan lang
Okay.
daw. Kapag 'di ba, dun sa erythropoietic na kwan na porphyria, yun yung 'di ba? Yun yung hindi siya pwede sa sunlight. So magkakaroon siya ng ng vitamin D deficiency.
Yes.
So
So,
paano yung treatment
go.
ng supplements din ba or meron pang other something kana?
Wala na kasing, di ba gaya ng nabanggit ni Gianna kanina, is wala talagang definitive na treatment for porphyria, only symptom management. So, yung vitamin D deficiency would be tawag dito, supplemented na lang by mga tablets or capsules na nagpo-provide sa katawan ng vitamin D since kailangan yung i-lessen yung hindi nga i-lessen, hindi ma-expose dapat yung patient with erythropoietic porphyria to sunlight. Ayun, so supplements na lang siguro and mga food ganyan na rich in vitamin D din. Does that satisfy your question po?
Sige, sige. Thank you. Ito yung follow-up pala dun sa yung sa kanina, yung sa bilirubin. Pwede na daw ba ang
Yep.
Pwede na ba kapag bata ang ang transfusion?
That I am not sure of. Pero if recommended siya siguro ng doktor na tumitingin sa kanya kasi nga tawag dito mataas na yung unconjugated bilirubin level ng bata. And if yung blood transfusion na lang yung only way to save the baby or yun to lower the unconjugated bilirubin, then I think it would be recommended by the doctor naman na.
Sige, sige.
Ayun.
So ito, thank you. Meron pang marami pang mga questions. Sige, ito. Yung
Sige,
una,
go lang.
sa female patient ng may porphyria, ano effect ng hormonal changes niya sa condition niya? Like for example, during menstruation and pregnancy. And paano yung management?
Pwede bang call a friend na? Hindi ko masagot yung question. Hello, group 4. Patulong naman sa pagsagot ng question.
Tulungan niyo na si Axel or sa mga anyone kung sino gusto sumagot para ma-enlighten tayong lahat. Baka mamaya niyo itanong ni Doc.
Nico. Dagdag ko na lang din pala dun sa tanong. Yun nga, for example, may pumuntang patient sa'yo na female patient na gustong mag-conceive. So, would you advise them, yung may porphyria siya, so would you advise them na ituloy yung pregnancy? What would be the risks para dun sa patient?
As of now, hindi ko rin kasi sure if advisable naman na ituloy ang pregnancy if ever you have porphyria. But according to what I read din kasi is in most cases naman is parang normal naman yung nagiging pregnancy. Pero yun na, nga lang hindi naman, during pregnancy kasi, di ba is tumataas yung progesterone ng isang babae. So, yung progesterone kasi is possible na makatrigger siya ng symptoms ng porphyria. So, yung elevated progesterone level would trigger acute attacks of the disease. Kasi nga nag-stimulate siya nung enzymes for heme production, di ba? So, yun. I can't answer directly if advisable ba to continue with pregnancy, but ang pwede kong i-explain dun sa patient is yung risk of having acute attacks of yung mga symptoms niya during kung itutuloy na magbuntis. Ayun. Does that satisfy your question po or gusto pa ng clarifications?
Magdadagdag lang din ako. As for the male naman, meron kasing estrogen-induced porphyria cutanea tarda. Yung hormones na estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone can cause increased ala synthase activity kasi.
Ayun po, may follow-up pa po ba?
Okay, so meron pang question. Related ba ang porphyria sa hyperbilirubinemia?
Ayun, so yung bilirubinemia, 'di ba, is disease din siya na related sa heme synthesis. So since ang porphyria is sa heme synthesis din nagkakaroon ng problem, so yun, they are related.
Okay, so
So,
satisfied na si Ma'am Luz,
um,
I think.
to add lang to that, Actually, yung porphyria and yung hyperbilirubinemia is not directly related talaga kasi ang porphyria kasi natin, ang may problem sa kanya is yun nga, is sa heme synthesis natin. So, nagkakaroon ng buildup ng porphyrins, hindi ng bilirubins. So, kaya nagkakaroon ng um, increase sa unconjugated bilirubin when it comes to cases like CEP or yung erythropoietic porphyria and yung EPP, which is erythropoietic protoporphyria. Ang nangyayari kasi sa kanila, secondary na lang siya sa RBC destruction. Kaya nagkakaroon ng increase ng unconjugated bilirubin. So, hindi siya directly dahil sa porphyria.
Okay. Thank you sa sa answers. Meron pa po bang iba mga magtatanong? Before kan? Okay, sige, habang naghintay tayo yung group 1, meron po bang comments sa presentation po ng group 4? Ikaw na ba, Humphrey, mag-comment? Mga group 1 dyan. Speechless daw sila sa presentation nyo.
Ayun. So, if walang comments or additional questions, maybe we can end the Zoom meeting na para makapag-review na rin tayong lahat for prelims next week.
Sige. Nagre-record nagsasalat pala si Humphrey kanina. Ayun yung mic niya.
Okay.
Sige. Okay na ba lahat? Bali, tapos na. Yan, wala rin daw kasing mic si Moises. Anyway, sabi naman nila Kit D is okay daw yung flow and actually very technical yung pagdi-discuss ng mga sakit and yung mga pertinent diseases. So, very very commendable po yung niyo, presentation niyo.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So ito na yung last. Okay na ba sa lahat, actually?
Heart react na lang po kung okay na.
Yan, para makapag-start na rin tayo ng review. So,
Ay, may tanong.
sige.
Regarding sa PowerPoint, isasubmit Google Drive?
Sige. Ibigay nyo na lang sa akin.
Okay.
Personal.
Tapos, isasubmit din kay Doc?
Oo.
Okay.
Lahat na rin ng group yun. Bigay na lang sa akin yung PPT. Tapos yung